Welcome to The Daly Dilemma, a series where a passionate 20-something-year-old tries to navigate the biggest environmental challenges of our time, armed with pragmatic optimism and tenacious determination. I'm your host, Sophie Daly. In today's episode, I will explore the power of the youth voice in shaping the world we live in. In recent years, we have witnessed a surge of young people from diverse cultural backgrounds uniting to combat the existential threat of climate change. These new voices are not just demanding action, but redefining the conversation, linking the climate crisis to issues of social justice and collective liberation. Despite the inaction of global leaders, today's youth activists are taking matters into their own hands, using their collective power to create a better future for generations to come. Join me as we delve into the unique role of youth climate activists and their ability to influence systemic change on the international scale. Youth activism is not a new phenomenon, but the matter to which it has manifested in the current socio-political arena reveals an unprecedented scope and scale. Comparatively, if we look back on the pivotal events of youth activism and the historical moments of existential solidarity, it would be irrational to neglect the success of the civil rights movements and other counterculture campaigns of the 1960s and 1970s. These social developments encapsulated an era of youth that collectively rejected and revolted against the normative social, political, and cultural ideas of their parents' generation. Certainly, this period was saturated with rebellious style, drug use, and musicomania, but extending beyond the superficial analysis of youth culture, we are able to recognize the full worth of this decade's progressive disposition. 60s youth, through unwavering dedication to transformative activism, boldly confronted conservative sentiments and championed critical causes of civil rights, war, women's liberation, and environmental justice. From Martin Luther King's March on Washington in 1963 to the monumental demonstrations for America's first Earth Day in 1970, these youth-driven mobilizations effectuated substantial and enduring change. The youth voices of these historical movements echoed into subsequent decades, disseminating experiences of successful activism and transmitting the enough is enough mentality to the contemporary youth. While youth participation is recognized as the backbone of many social movements, both in their historical and modern context, the heightened generational concern of the climate crisis has provoked a new wave of environmental advocacy, in which the emerging youth climate activism has harnessed the methods and ideologies laid out by its predecessor movement, traditional environmentalism, and ameliorated them in a manner that transcends the sentiments and realities of youth activism. Communities around the world are already experiencing the devastating consequences of human-induced global warming, with extreme weather events including tropical cyclones and floods, heavy precipitation and droughts, and increased frequency of wildfires. We are also witnessing the extensive ecological impacts of rising sea levels, perpetuating widespread internal displacement of individuals in Pacific Island countries. These ecological and societal repercussions materialize at only a 1 degree Celsius increase in average global temperatures. What will the planet endure at a 1.5 degree increase? Significant number of experts have sounded the alarm. The international community has just 10 years to execute exhaustive, systematic changes dedicated to reducing emission levels before the rise in global temperatures generates long-lasting and irreversible damage. As this devastating truth dawns upon us, younger generations are experiencing an escalating sense of fear. The extent of climate anxiety among today's youth was unveiled in a study published in the Lancet Planet Health Journal. This 2021 study surveyed 10,000 individuals between the ages 16 and 25 across 10 countries, where almost 70% of the respondents expressed either extreme or great worry about climate change. Developing countries in the global south showed higher numbers of worry, such as Philippines with 84% and India and Brazil with 78% and 77% respectively. Faced with the unwanted burden of responsibility to repair our dying planet, the youth of our time did not wallow in fear or succumb to the belittling victim narrative, rather they became angry with the deplorable efforts administered by government actors, and outraged by the world's political leaders' meager solutions. It is within the overwhelming expression of anger that today's youth acknowledge themselves as environmental stewards for the future, and thus heralds the arrival of the international youth climate movements that facilitated the reconception of the climate crisis as an urgent interdisciplinary issue, whereby the aim of climate action is not an isolated matter, but the intent to achieve collective liberation.
Climate activism, and especially the new youth climate movement, is about mobilizing and galvanizing as many people as possible in the fight for justice. It's about a political education of how we got to where we are and how we can stand up and strike back. It's about changing those who are apathetic into those who take action, about creating a movement and then continuing to build on it.
That was Noga Levy-Rappaport, a 20-year-old college student and climate justice activist, in her 2022 TED Talk on the power of youth. She highlights the distinctive capability of the younger generation to bring about change and revolutionize our planet in the midst of a changing climate and an imminent ecological catastrophe. Noga signifies one of millions of young people worldwide engaging in climate activism. The most established name in youth climate activism, one that you have certainly heard before, is Swedish teenager Greta Thunberg. Researchers at Pakyong National University in Korea, analyzing the impact of youth mobilization to stop climate change, revealed that Thunberg galvanized one of the most widespread environmental social movements in history, the 2018-2019 school strikes for climate. In the first launch of what she referred to as Fridays for Future, students boycotted school, sacrificing their educational development to protest government's inability to uphold the standards set out by the Paris Agreement. Thunberg's activism quickly took to social media and attracted international attention. And on March 15, 2019, an estimated 1.4 million people across 128 countries participated in this powerful form of activism. Although Greta Thunberg is a primary enabler of today's youth-oriented climate initiatives, a singular movement does not effectively epitomize the bold and resilient attitudes of our modern-day youth climate activism. The comprehensive, systematic change that today's youth means to catalyze does not stem from a singular individual. It is achieved through an international network of young, diverse individuals spearheading the complex dimensions of climate action. Amidst the abounding individuals intensifying the global youth's call to action is climate warriors like Archana Sarang, a pioneer for young indigenous voices. The 27-year-old environmental activist belongs to the Kariya tribe in Odisha, India. She's one of the 7 members making up the newly established Secretary-General's UN Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change. Her activist efforts prioritize traditional knowledge and practices and mainstreaming the indigenous worldview in government climate action decision-making processes. Her initiatives, along with many other indigenous climate leaders, facilitated the first formal recognition of the vital role that indigenous communities play in preserving ecosystems and forests within science-based climate reports. The United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs have found that even though indigenous communities like Archana's account for approximately 5% of the global population, they proficiently oversee about 20 to 25% of the planet's land surface. The territories they manage are also where 80% of the world's biodiversity resides, along with around 40% of all ecologically undisturbed landscapes and protected areas of land. Indigenous societies emulate a way of life that is fundamentally governed by a harmonious relationship with nature and community, fostering a high degree of environmental respect and appreciation. Their knowledge and practices are of immense value and significance in terms of their unique capacity to overcome climate change's negative effects through adaptation pathways and eco-friendly mechanisms. Georgia Magni of the International Bureau of Education asserts that indigenous-led nature-based solutions like rotational agriculture and agroforestry have allowed many of these communities to maintain a sustainable use and management of natural resources, protect their environment, and strengthen their resilience while facing new and complex circumstances. Thus, it is of critical importance that our youth climate movements enhance the protection of Indigenous knowledge systems and strive to emulate their nature-based climate tactics and policy mechanisms. Rather than ceaselessly discussing the indispensable role of Indigenous knowledge and the potential of the new youth climate movement in advancing an all-encompassing climate action agenda, I'll show the poignant words of Nina Gwalinga, a young Indigenous climate activist, to evince the profound significance of recognizing Indigenous perspectives in contemporary youth climate activism.
Everything that we are, everything that we need, comes from the land itself. Food, medicine, even mental health. And that's exactly why Indigenous voices is extremely important at the COP, for example, because I can assure you that Indigenous peoples have done more than any government in the world in the fight against climate change.
Thank you all for tuning in to The Daily Dilemma. As we come to the end of another emotional roller coaster ride of an episode, I challenge you to critically engage with both the pessimistic narratives and optimistic portrayals constructing our environmental reality. This is not to throw you into a distressing thought spiral or to promote undue hope, but to show that you have agency when it comes to how we perceive and approach the uncertainties plaguing our planet's future. We can easily become paralyzed by our climate anxiety, overwhelmed by doubt and despair, unmotivated to act. And just as easily, we can succumb to the type of wishful thinking that something else or someone will resolve the climate crisis, disposing of any individual responsibility we have towards climate change. Alternatively, we can harness a pessimistically optimistic approach, exemplified by the contemporary youth climate movement, where the younger generations are acknowledging the challenges and uncertainties of the future, but still holding on to hope and acting towards positive change. It's a powerful thing, this mindset. It's a frame of mind that allows us to confront the harsh realities of our environmental crisis while also recognizing that there are still opportunities for progress and solutions. Join me in our upcoming episodes as we delve deeper into the world's most unsettling environmental challenges and showcase the remarkable efforts of those committed to building a more inclusive, sustainable future.